Dogs keep running away, mom sets up camera and sees why. Mariah was dumbfounded at how her dog left the house. Immediately, she ran outside. Once again, she was nowhere to be seen. A chill went down her spine. How could a dog simply disappear? None of it made any sense. She called a security company and installed cameras all around her house. But what she'd find would leave her scarred. 42-year-old Mariah was going through possibly the worst weeks of her life when her beloved dogs mysteriously went missing. She was fresh out of a divorce with her ex-husband of 15 years. It was a long hard battle in court and one that turned ugly. So in the end, she was glad to finally be done with him. Little did she know, it wasn't over yet. For Mariah, getting a divorce wasn't a decision she took lightly. In fact, if there was any way to salvage the relationship she had with her husband, she would have done it, but there wasn't. For years, they were unhappy. They fought about everything and grew apart quickly. Mariah knew it was for the best, but it didn't make it any easier. The one thing that did, however, was her 2 dogs. Mariah loved her 2 French bulls more than anything in the world. With no kids, the dogs became her babies and she showered them with love and attention. So imagine her surprise and she woke up one morning to have discovered that her precious girls ran away. Mariah was distraught. Her dogs never ran away before. Immediately, she called the authorities. The authorities couldn't offer her much help but advised her to put up signs and ask around if anyone had seen them. Mariah was miserable. 6 grueling months went by before Mariah accepted that she may never find her beloved babies. But just when she was about to give up hope, she heard a scratch on her door. It was one of her dogs, Cindy. Mariah dropped to her knees in shock and picked up her beloved dog. She was in great condition, she didn't look like she was living rough for 6 months at all. Mariah wept as she hugged Cindy, asking her where she had been all the time and where her sister, Belle, was. That night Mariah slept soundly for the first time in months. But the nightmare wasn't over yet. The next day, Mariah woke up to an empty house again. Only this time, it made no sense. She had locked the door flap that she thought the dogs previously escaped from. Mariah was dumbfounded at how her dog left the house. Immediately, she ran outside. Once again, she was nowhere to be seen. A chill went down her spine. She installed security cameras. Mariah called a company to set up her cameras. Now without the dogs, she felt unsafe and had long been meaning to get them installed. But what they'd capture was far beyond her wildest imagination. It was a month later, after continuous searching, that Mariah heard the scratching at her door again. She raced to her front door and couldn't believe what was in front of her. It was Cindy again. Mariah thanked her lucky stars and praised Cindy for finding her way back to her. She hugged her tight and went straight to the store to buy a cage. There was no way she'd let her run off again. But Mariah couldn't figure out one thing. Why did she look so well kept? Was a neighbor looking after her? If so, her posters were all over the street. Mariah's heart pounded at an eerie realization. Was one of her neighbors keeping her dogs from her? The next morning Mariah once again woke up to an empty house. Now, she was more than baffled. She looked at the empty cage and raced around the house. How? Suddenly, Mariah remembered the cameras she installed. Her mind raced as she opened the screen. Mariah ran to her laptop, found last night's footage, and hit play. She sat on the edge of her seat as she hit fast forward. Suddenly, movement popped into her screen. With absolute horror, she watched as a man opened her front door with a key and exited moments later with Cindy nestled calmly into his arms. Then she saw his face. Mariah was fuming. Her dogs weren't running away, they were kidnapped. She watched as her ex-husband took out a key to her front door and entered her house while she was fast asleep. She was in complete shock. How could he do this? He knew the one thing she loved more than life itself were her dogs. What was he thinking? The house Mariah now lives in used to belong to both of them, but since the divorce, it was now hers. She still hadn't changed the locks, and he obviously still had a key. Mariah had no idea where he was living now, but after talking to his family, she learned that he had moved into a house a few blocks down her street. Mariah stormed down the street. Mariah thumped on his door. He opened it, shocked to have seen her and to have been caught red-handed. According to her ex-husband, he brought the dogs home from the shelter, so he owned them. But the court had already ruled they were Mariah's. The dogs both ran out from behind her ex-husband and leaped into her arms. They were delighted to see her. Then she called the cops. Mariah wasted no time in giving her ex-husband an official warning from the authorities to not try this again. She headed home with her beloved babies, happier than ever. Although she was livid at her ex-husband for doing that, she was thankful that the dogs had been well looked after and were completely unharmed.
Thank you for watching this fantastic story. Please tap one of the 2 videos on your screen for another amazing Wonder Stories.